How many of you are on a recent enough IRB to recognize this? No? One? OK. Come on, update Ruby. OK. Hello, I am Fernando. I am a software developer from Spain. I have been working in Ruby since 2006, which makes me probably the oldest people using Ruby here. I am not saying oldest. Or closely. I helped organizing the Rails conference in Spain. I was first attendee, then speaker, then organizer, then burned out person. And you can find most about me on this website, including the slides and all of the code that you're going to see. So if the code is very little, you can see it there later. OK? So there are two things that I want to talk about here. One is there is life beyond Rails. Rails is not the only thing that exists in Ruby. And the other thing is like, OK, you hear this tag and you want to do things without Rails. What are you going to miss and how to solve it? OK? So a lot of time ago, like 21 years ago, there was a talk about building a blog in 15 minutes. You have heard about it today. I want to point that YouTube started on like March of 2005, and this talk was on October or November of 25. So it's like YouTube was like a handful of months old when this tag hit, and it was like very viral, and it brought a lot of people into Ruby, which is good because we love Ruby, and the more people doing Ruby, the best. But that means that a lot of people only know Ruby through Rails. In fact, there is a game online that you can go, which has a quiz test that asks you, is this method Ruby or is this method Rails? And for most of the people using Ruby nowadays, this is a difficult quiz. They are like, I am not sure. Is sample on array or is it sample on active support array something, something? So you can go to that place and take. So let me try to show you very fast 45 or so examples of things that are done with Ruby or you can do with Ruby or you can use from Ruby without having Rails involved. So please don't suffer to take notes. I will publish all of the links and all of the examples. The first thing that you can do with Ruby is solve the same problem Rails is solving. So I want to do a web app, and I want to read from a database and throw some HTML. So Sinatra, Padrino, Genami, and BruteRB are different takes on how to solve the same problem. That is not very interesting because it is the same problem. If you have Rails, you have that problem solved. Another thing you can do with Ruby in the web world is, I want to consume a web, and I want to do something about a web, so I want some way to script the usage of a way to test it, to program it, to do a bot that is buying my tickets for a concert that has a lot of people trying to buy tickets for the concert. And sometimes you don't want to the whole well experience, you only want to touch HTML. Then you can use Nokogiri, which is, fun fact, the most downloaded gem of all times, in part, virtue of being a dependency of Rails, or Mechanize, which is a similar idea. You can also test software. You know this from Ruby because Rails promotes testing, and most of us have been doing testing. These are some of the most famous libraries that you have. The right one, the wrong one, the one that no one is using anymore, and the joke one that fails if your test takes longer than 2 seconds, or a configurable threshold since the last versions. So also, you can throw jobs to the background. We have learned that processes and threads are a content-use stuff, but outside of the web world, you might be reading a million lines CSV, and you have to do something about each line, and you don't want to do it on the same process that it is reading them. So I can throw it to a family of 17 processes that are doing something for each line, and a lot of other similar things. Or you could be a service that is running CI for other people. Many of you are familiar with GitHub Actions or Jenkins or Semaphore. This is a similar one that is built on Ruby but without Rails. You can be trying to move your system or trying to control your Linux from Ruby. So you have the Ruby version of Make, you have Chef and Puppet that allows you to configure a server, you have Homebrew, which is what everybody in the world is using to install free software on Mac, you have the deployment tools, you have virtualization, and you have backups. we are getting further and further away from the web and database and HTML problem. You can use security testing or on others people's code or systems you cannot see the insights, or security testing on your own code and making sure that you are safe with memory and allocation and all that. Or you can publish your books, your pages, your blog. Someone mentioned that they were using Bridgestone. I think it was the first speaker. So you can publish a static web page when you don't want the dynamic components. And you can use Ruby or things that are similar to Ruby to control your robot, your vacuum cleaner, your Raspberry Pi, your chip that is controlling the watering of your plants, or you want to throw it inside JS because for some reason you want to run Ruby inside JS, or you want to write inside the assembler version of the browser. You can build desktop applications. SUSE was a very nice project from Why the Lucky Steve. If you are old enough, you know who I am talking about. Scarpe is the new version. Or you can be making games. Who get into computer programming without ever dreaming about doing video games? You are the only one? 2? Okay. So about 88 or something people did dream about doing video games at some point. This is what I needed the internet connection for, so that they could do something like this. No. Okay, it's a nice video of a boat floating with visual effects and something. You can see it on the presentation, but because it is on YouTube, we don't have it here. So, not so exciting as video games. There is a case which is building command line interfaces. Command line interfaces have been cool since the 70s. Everybody uses them. They are very useful. And we have like some tools if you just want to do a little bit of a command line interface to call something else. Here you have the tools. But I want to say why they are so important today. They were the thing everyone was using 30 years ago, and they are the thing that all of the robots are using right now. If you want your agents to be able to control whatever, the easy way is to a text interface, because that is what the robots are made of. They are made of text, they understand text, they output text, so throwing text at something allows you to call GitHub, to read your Jira issues, to understand the crash on your database, to fuzzy filter something, to look for files, to grep, to pay, to change the format of your video, or to change the format of a document with Pandoc. So, and I can go slightly slower now. What are we going to do? We are going to build a CLI. That is the example I wanted to bring today. So if you tomorrow start to do a Bring CLI, you don't do Rails new, because it is not a Rails application. It is not a web application. It might or might not have a database, but Rails does not make sense there. And if you learn it, Ruby, with Rails, you will miss stuff. So most of the stuff can be solved with adding a dependency, but if we want very small tools, maybe we don't want dependencies. I want to give you tools to fix all of the things, well, some of the things that you might miss from Rails if you start a Ruby script application tomorrow, okay? I have a sample here of things that Rails does for us, that if you open hello.rb and start writing are not happening automatically for you. And the first one is autoloading dependencies. When you are on post.rb in Rails, you are not requiring the active record so that it works. It is magically there. For a lot of time, you had to do a lot of requires in Ruby. And then came Rails, and someone very astute did, oh, we can hook on the event that Ruby does when a constant is missing, and we can load it. It was very hacky, but it was awesome because it worked. So what do you do when a hacky solution is solving a real problem? You make it nice. So thanks to our very free and savvy Noria, now we have Sideberg, which is a gem that allows you to auto-load any Ruby file that has the same name and path that the namespace and the constant. So this is an example. I hope Nono is behind me of how can you start your Ruby program, making sure that you only require Sideberg and whatever has been extracted from a standard library, like base64, which was automatic now, and now you have to require it. But all that you do is you call Sideberg, you add one path or more, and you do setup, from this moment on, everything that you call will be automatically looked for in the right path and loaded. I like to have this on lib setup, and I like to have setup.run here so that when you require this file, it is already working on all of your application. So to use it, from wherever you are going to start your application, you use require relative setup, and it works. Require relative setup if you are on lib. If you are somewhere else, require relative where you are. Okay? We have solved one of our problems. Now we have autoloading like Rails. Okay. Next, I told you that we would call this from the CLI entry point. What CLI entry point? Okay, let's do a CLI entry point. So this is a very stupid minimal version of a CLI entry point, but if you want a Ruby script to be run when you call it, instead of just loading Ruby code, you can do this. This means if I have some code here, it is loaded, but if the name of this file is the name of the command that has been called, run whatever code you got here. This is a very standard procedure, so you can only do this here, or you can be doing more things here depending on how complex is your application. This pattern is so common that it is the same in Python. If you come from Python, you also have, if the program name is the same as the file name, run this thing, okay? We have two things. I told you that we could be doing more things there. Like, okay, if this is a CLI, most of CLIs have a lot of options. If you open FFmpeg manual, I think it has 2,400 lines with all of the options that you can give it to code and decode or whatever. So how can we read some of those options? Rails also has a lot of options, but it has the non-sub commands. So let's go there. So we have this library on the standard library, which is called option parse, and option parse allows you to call it with the new. It gives you a parser object, and to parser object, you give you the short version, the long version, and a description, and you store it somewhere. I am using a hash because it is the easiest way to store something, and I am giving you just one example because the size of this does not enable for most, but if you run this, it will return you a hash also of options, okay? Here, I would not want to do anything else. You can see that I have been editing my slides until the last moment because they are broken. So I am not storing these options anywhere else because the thing that we are going to speak about now is where do we store configuration. I don't want to have a hash everywhere because there is a code decimal that is called primitive obsession, which means you are using strings, number, hashes, and arrays for everything instead of your custom data types. So instead of just storing that config and accessing it as a hash, I would like to have something nicer. Because we are speaking about things that we are missing from Rails, I want to copy Rails. What does Rails have? Rails have this singleton place, call it Rails configuration, that you can just call the options as a method. Can I copy that? Let's see. So, I am missing this, okay. So, this file is a little bit larger, and I don't like showing very small code, so I'm going to show it in 3 times. What do I need to have a configuration singleton? I want to have the default values. I want to have a value object that I give you back. I want to have an accessor so that I can access this instance of the singleton. I want to be able to change the settings if I want. And I want to also to be able to retrieve a value. So, defaults, you have one key for each configuration value that you have, and you have the default value. You can use defaults to create this value object. And my favorite way of creating value objects in Ruby is using data define, because it is a little bit more ergonomic than structs. So I am taking the keys of the defaults to say these are the methods that you will be able to call on options. And now I want to be able to set up those values. So I have a method that takes a hash, merges that hash on the default. So if there is a value here, we are using. If the value is missing here, we are using the value that we have on the defaults. And here I have the updated values. But I don't want anything weird coming from that hash that was not allowed in options. So I am taking only the values that were keys from my configuration. And I am updating the values and creating this new object that I will return back. Because this is on the instance, and this is a singleton method, and we don't want to access to the instance calling .instance every time, we have these methods to be able to access the instance from the class. So I can do config, setup, and it gives me the thing. It allows me to update all of them. I will call this from the option parse hash, and it gives me option to read one option. And what it does is, because the value object, you can call all of the methods, you can call them here. So if I use that code, I can do config option foo, but it's not as nice as the Rails one. So because the option value object is exposed on the class, I can do config options and call the configuration as a method. So success, I have such a nice configuration system as Rails. And it was like 14 lines of Ruby. I did not need a library. I did not need to import something. I only need to know maybe a lot about hashes and splitting. Okay? But if I want to do better, because writing like Rails configuration or config option is very long, and I am very lazy, and also I am very bad at typing. I cannot type 4 letters in the right order. I want to write something that is very, 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 very short. I'm going to do a configurable module that is going to have the class that I am using for configuration as the default value for this. This allows me to do dependency injection when I am testing this. And the only thing that it's going to do is call the option, which is the non-method way, and the key. What do I have with this? Every place where I include configurable, then I can have if config name of configuration. That's it. If you have a base class, you can include configurable in the base class, and you do not have to include configurable everywhere. I think this is the nicest. I am not using the parentheses like the Seattle RV people, so it feels like a DSL, even if it is just calling a method that has been included. So we are halfway there. What else do we have in Rails automatic? Very nice. We have very nice unconfigurable logs. And if I have an application that I am developing, it won't work at the first try, and I want to have very detailed logs so that I can debug it, or I can throw it to a robot for the robot to debug the application for me because I am very lazy. So I want to have this. I want to have logger info something, and I want this to throw something like this to standard output, or to a file, or to OpenTelemetry, or to whatever. Right? How do we do that? I'm going to create a concern. You will find out that I like concerns a lot. And it is going to have 2 methods. One is to set up a new logger, and this is the default one, because if you don't do anything, you go to the standard output. If you call logger equals whatever, then you can put anything that has the same interface as logger, or that you give a grapper that has the same interface as logger. So here you can replace this with OpenTelemetry, JSON structured logging, or Sentry, or whatever APM that you are using. Okay? And I will use this to be able to change where are we logging to. How often do you change where do you want to log to? No one? There is like 2 occasions that happened to me. Well, this is the usage, okay? With what we have do, you extend loggable, and you see logger info, and it is working. I am including the usage of all of them. But this is the case where I want to change where are we logging to. I don't want to run all of my tests and see 600 lines of logs in the middle of my test. So I can test that I am logging the right thing, so I create a mock. I say, hey, log to my mock logger instead of the real one, run something, and just I want to verify that you call it that log line. If you have always used RSpec and allow any instance of and want to read how to use mocks in Minitest, this is a link. And the other thing I might want to do on a test is like, okay, I have already tested the logs. I don't want to see the logs. I don't mind. The logs are tested, they work. In the rest of the tests, I don't want logs. So you can use the same method to give it a stupid object that is going to have the logging method that you're going to use and do nothing. And then when you call your code, there is no logs going nowhere. This is a no-op that you can use so that you don't see logs there. If you are using Rails logging facility, there is a setting that you can put to log or not log or disable the log in environment testing. But it was a concern with 2 lines of code and solved the same problem for you. Okay, I have shown you a module with include and a module with extend. If you came from Rails and you were using a lot of active support concern, you know that there is some magic you can do, so you have never to remember if you are doing include or extend, or you can take this code that I showed to you, change it to this, and now you have the methods both in include and in extend. You call include calls extend, and it works. If you open active support concern code, half of it is here. Okay. Performance traces. We have a very good talk about, is this running, it is slow, it is on I/O, where it is. And one of the very nice things that Rails has on the logs is that it has the time that it spent on the database, the time that it spent rendering the view, and I don't remember if you have the time of the whole request, but I think that is the case. So I want to copy that. I want to have that in my shitty CLI that I am doing to, I don't know, check the weather. Okay, so here I'm going to use a surprise, a module, but this case I'm going to use a module that uses the logging module. What do I want to do? I want to call logger to say we are starting to do whatever. I'm going to create this variable outside of the block because I want to keep it later, and if I create it here, it stops existing on the closing bracket. I'm going to use this standard library class called benchmark that allow me to stopwatch how long something is taking. Then I'm going to put to the log how long did this take, but I want to do this. I want to return the result so that I can take any part of my application, grab it in measure with a label, but still get the result that I was going to get, so that I don't have to choose between, I don't have to take the return manually for myself. Are we okay? Are we awake? Are we hungry? Okay. Shout at me if I am going too fast or... Okay, so in case that you want this code to include loggable for you, you change it to do this, and then every time you do include measurable, it is including loggable for you, and you don't have to remember that one depends on the other. It's like an automatic dependency. Okay, how do you use these things? You call measure, put a label, run your thing, and if you want the return from run, you can take it here because it is working, and you have a log like this. And if you are logging more stuff, you would see the list of the logs here. There is a version of this that supports nested or recursive calls, and I have a version that it is adding dashes here, so you can see how deep in the calls it was, but it does not fit on a slide. Okay, what else do we miss from Rails that it is very easy? Action view. I want to have an HTML with the fixed part of what I am doing, HTML, Markdown, PDF, LaTeX, whatever, but I want to put dynamic parts in it so that it changes each time that I run. Rails is using ERB. ERB is included in the standard library, so you can just do this, but there is a part about this that I don't like a lot, which is how do we move values into an ERB template. Okay? This template, we create a variable, and then we pass binding to ERB, and then it works, and it is seen by. What is binding? Binding is an object that contains all of the variables that you can see from the place that you call binding. And if that is making you get a little bit dizzy and thinking, oh, what happens if I have variables that were not for the template? They are a variable on the template, whether you like it or not. So maybe we want to filter this a little bit, like ActionView is doing for us, and it is only sending the instance variables instead of sending everything that we are passing there. So we can build a view that has its own ERB template, and we can create an object which you are going to guess is a data-defined object that only has the variables that I want to pass to the view. How can we build this? Is this very complicated? Is it a 5,000 lines class? No, it is something like this. You do a data-define, you have one word per thing that you want to pass, and you have one method that allows you to expose this binding. You don't use the binding name here because it is a private method, so you use a different one. And I am putting the class method so that I don't need to worry about the instance of this one. I am using the instance to get me the binding. I don't want the instance for anything else. So the usage of this was like this. You do context for binding, and you throw context in the place where you usually would have thrown binding, and it works. Okay. Are we done? What were we building? Have you been paying attention? We have been building this system together. What was it? Cloud code? No. We were building the software that is serving the slides for you. That's the reason we were using a template. So these that you are seeing here are the logs. Slides build start and end in 0 seconds because it is apparently very fast to build the slides. And if you look here, this is the code that is serving the slides to you. Here you have the CLI that starts. Here you have setup. No, this is setup, this is CLI that you can see here. Here you have the concerns. You have configurable. I'm going to show you one with more options. Where are we on setup? We have the parser with all of the options that we were doing. So what we have been building is this. An interesting piece of information is that none of these concerns have been built on purpose for this presentation. Everything that you have seen here has been salvaged from previous projects, and most of it has been salvaged several times away. Many of them appeared when I had to do an exercise to get to a company, to get to the interview, that I had to process a CSV and do some accounting calculations, and I wanted to do a very nice CLI so that it was impressive for the person correcting the exercise, and I say, oh, I want this Dockerized, and I want this to have a nice CLI with, oh, I forgot to say, when you use Option parse, it gives you the help screen for free. If you do -H, it shows you all of the options that you have there for free. So what we were building was the slides for this presentation. So I have more, and I don't know if I have time. I have a bonus. Do I have time? No? Yes. Okay, so here I have 2 other pieces of code that I have used in other projects, but do not make sense on a slide building CLI or whatever, which is, okay, in Rails you have Rails money that gives you very nice attributes when you say monetize amount, and it gives you amount in sets and it's stored in there. If you want to just depend on the money application, this is the code that the Rails money is doing for you. This is defining a method that is the name of the attribute. It reads it, it gets to float, it gets the cents, and it is storing it as cents, and it is going the opposite. When you have the money, you read from cents, you read the attribute. So if you are doing accounting because you are processing a CSV with amounts for whatever, which is something that in my experience happens when you are applying to jobs in fintech, then you can reuse this logic. This is how you use that. You extend monetizable, you say monetize and the name of the attribute. Your real attribute is cents as an integer, because if you are working with money, you should never store anything in float, if no one told you. Free tip today. And when you do order new, you pass it integer, but when you read it, you can read it as a money value object, or you can have it formatted with the locale and the little things that money are giving you. So these are like the extra that we had today. And do I have time for bonus too? No? Okay. What happened here? No, you sabotaged me. Another thing that I missed a lot from Rails, the thing that I missed the most, was being able to say 3 days ago. And I could have monkey patched integer, but that felt kind of wrong. So I say, how close can I get to having 3 days ago, 2 months from now, or something like that in Ruby without having active support, which is not a small library to bring with you to a CLI. So I opened active support date and time. I looked for the methods that I wanted, and I just copied them. So if you want beginning of month, you are doing change on a date, and you are only change date to 1. If you want end of month, you need to know how many days are in month, and that is a constant with the number of the days in each month, and a check to see if you are on a leap year to say 29 on February, but nothing more complicated. The 2 important methods here are change and advance. Change is like this, creates a new date with all of the data that you have, replace it by the data that you have received. If you receive year, you change year. If you don't receive year, you use the year you already have. This is change, no more mystery. It's that with 6 attributes. And the other one, which is advance, is just doing this. It's like if you are advancing days and months and weeks, you are multiplying things by the number of the thing that you are doing. So it is not very complicated. This is the check to see if you are on a leap year. Don't worry about the code you don't see, because I will share the code. So this is how you can use this library. You include dateable somewhere, and you can say days ago 7. Not as nice as 7.days.ago, but it is nice enough for me, and it is a method that I can understand without understanding that integer knows about dates. So we have all of the progress. We have the extras. Any questions? Can I do questions? No? Yes? No, I can do questions. So thank you, everyone.